everybody, Sam Amico here with another edition. We're getting close. It's Hoops Wire Live on 330 to go. We've got all kinds of stuff on hoopswire.com this week that I wasn't expecting to have to write, which, of course, starts with, since we last spoke, Isaac Okoro's contract extension, or I'm sorry, new contract, I guess you would call it. You start with him. A little bit of a surprise. He got a 3-year deal, but not a huge surprise. And it's a team-friendly contract for Isaac Okoro. The Cavs are obviously running it back with everybody from last season, right? I mean, I don't think they're missing anybody other than Marcus Morris, who signed with the Knicks. So, you know, it seems like everybody's back, and you're going to be approaching the season with a new coach and saying, let's see what he can do with our current group. And we're going to bank on familiarity, if you're the Cavs, to try to get to another level, right? First round, second round of the playoffs. Next year, the natural progression would be the Eastern Conference Finals. If you're going to take the next step, you're banking on Kenny Atkinson to help get you there. You think the coaching change, a new system, a new philosophy with the same players can take you there. So that's why Isaac Okoro was re-signed. I think it's going to be really interesting because they drafted Jalen Tyson, who a lot of people like, who plays, you know, he's about the same size as Isaac Okoro. He can play the point guard. He can play off the ball. And it'll be interesting to see. I think Tyson's more of in terms of a skill set, more of a Karis LeVert type, in the sense that he can facilitate. Tyson and LeVert both facilitate offense. They're bigger guards. They can play any shooting guard, small forward. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of this works and how Kenny Atkinson works out a rotation that frankly goes about 10 deep, maybe even 11 or 12. So I think that's very interesting. Listen, next week, we've got Kobe Altman and Kenny Atkinson next Friday meeting with the media, which is an odd thing to do because training camp doesn't start, or I'm sorry, media day isn't until Monday. I believe that's September 30th. So a week from Monday is media day. Now, Atkinson and Altman next Friday, a week from today, are meeting with the media at the practice facility. I should know this because I got to be there, right? At the practice facility. I'm sure of that. And then media day the following Monday. It's going to be interesting this year. I'll give you a little inside information on media day. Usually, that is going to be, media day is going to be at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And that's going to be, obviously, to me, it looks like it's just going to be players. If Altman and Kenny Atkinson are meeting with the media 3 days before actual media day. So the key is here on media day, the players, normally, let's say there's a big name player, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. Who else has a big name on the Cavs? Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. As you can tell, I've only had one cup of coffee. I'll have like 6 more before the end of the show, I promise. But on media day, normally they bring out the star player, Donovan Mitchell. They bring him out separately to a big table, right? The core 4, they'll bring them out separately to a big table where they sit there and there's chairs in front of it, you know, for the media to sit. Because let's face it, Donovan Mitchell is going to get a lot more people asking him questions than, say, Sam Merrill or Craig Porter Jr. I mean, it's not to pick on those guys. That's just the reality of it. Guys who's the star or a key starter is going to have a lot more reporters asking them questions. So they normally would bring them out to a big table. And then, you know, guys like Sam Merrill or Craig Porter Jr., Isaiah Mobley, guys who are like 9th to 12th men are going to be at smaller tables that you can just walk up to and interview them that way. Well, guess what? This year, everybody's going to be at the small table. Not going to have the big main table where they're going to bring out Donovan Mitchell and, all the media will sit down in the chairs and interview him that way. Everybody's going to be treated equally in terms of access. Now, there's going to be a lot more people around Donovan Mitchell's pod, is what the Cavs are calling them. They call them pods. There's going to be a lot more people around his pod than other people, but they're also going to stagger the players out to make it easier. 5 minutes, I think it is. You get 5 minutes at a table, and then they'll bring out somebody else. And if you want to go to that table, you can. So it's just an interesting way to do it. For me, honestly, guys, media day is not so much about interviewing the players, although I do enjoy that element of it. It's reconnecting with the other media members, getting to see them after an off season, visit with them. And guess what? The biggest news of this, I don't want to say the biggest news of the NBA offseason, but certainly the biggest NBA news in September, without question, is the retirement of, that's it, Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN. I mean, it was stunning to me. It was stunning to most of the people in the industry. Now, listen, I can't, I talk to the players a little bit and well, quite a bit, but I don't, they're not spilling their guts. They're not giving me a ton of inside information, nor should they. They're telling me kind of what they should say for the most part. And that's good. You want that relationship. You don't want anybody going too far off the rails when you're talking about an NBA player. Stay focused on the task at hand. And that's not talking to the media if you play in the NBA. It's winning basketball games. So I will say that. But when it comes to the media and the NBA media, I'm an industry insider, okay? I mean, all I do is talk to NBA media people in terms of, while 90% of my job involves talking to other NBA media members. I've got some great Woj stories, talk to them a lot. Talk to Shams Sharina. I talk to people who know what's going on with those guys. That's our job. We're NBA writers. We're in a community. We hang out, we talk. So I know a lot about what's going on with Adrian Wojnarowski. And look, he's honest. He's not lying. He's had enough. He had enough. It just hit him. It came to him. You're talking 3 hours of sleep a night, most nights, for how many years now? At least a decade. No vacations. Maybe you go on a vacation, but you're still working. Maybe you go out of town in August or September when football season starts, but you're still working. When probably about 3 years ago, I have so much to say on this. I'm going to try and kind of not go too long with it, but let me start here. And I'm going to try and organize it. My thoughts aren't really organized, but to me, this was stunning. And obviously it leaves a huge hole for ESPN to fill. And ESPN's bosses were very surprised that Adrian Wojnarowski announced he's retiring. When he went to them and told his bosses at ESPN, they were stunned. And, we're a week out of training camp, a little more than a week. And so that now they have a huge hole to fill and a very little amount of time to do it. But it's been a game of musical chairs in the NBA insider media this offseason. Woj isn't the only one moving on, right? We'll get to that in a second. A few years ago, let me start with I think it was 2012, and I posted this on my Amico Hoops Facebook page. In 2012, I wrote a story when I was working at Fox Sports Ohio. I had some inside stuff that LeBron already wasn't real happy in Miami. And I wrote that story. I had the great information from multiple sources, Miami, Cleveland, all across the league. So I wrote the story. I felt comfortable enough writing the story that LeBron wasn't real thrilled in Miami and already was thinking, I should just go back to Cleveland. That was in 2012. So I wrote that story. Obviously, you undergo a ton of ridicule, which normally I deserve. But in this situation, I didn't feel like it was warranted. So I wrote that story. A lot of blowback, a lot of ridicule, a lot of hate, because people in Miami are mad that I would dare source a story that says LeBron's already not thrilled there with the way it's set up, feels uncomfortable. Now, things changed for him before he came back to Cleveland. I don't think he came back to Cleveland because he was unhappy in Miami at the end. But 2012, I can tell you, was not happy with Miami. It was a totally different situation. He brought his friends on the plane. The very minute he did in Cleveland, that was fine when he was a younger player. Bring his friends on the plane or his co-work, his guys, his team. Miami, he did that once. Pat Riley said, "What are these guys doing here?" LeBron's like, "They always travel with me." And Pat Riley said, "No, they don't. Get them off the plane." And that was that. LeBron couldn't figure it out. He couldn't figure out also, he didn't understand the venom and fervor that was directed at him in Miami when he first got there from not only Cavs fans, but kind of across the league. He didn't get that. So he didn't like it first. So I wrote that story and I got the blowback. And guess who came to my defense? Woj. Woj not only came to my defense within kind of the NBA community, but wrote about it on Yahoo Sports. I posted how he mentioned me in his column on my Amico Hoops Facebook page. I also tweeted it out. And that really meant a lot to me, because you're talking about the heaviest hitter in terms of NBA media that everybody trusts to come out and say, look, there's no doubt this is what Sam Amico reported, and already we know it's true. And that meant a lot to me from Adrian Wojnarowski. Now, going back to a Woj story that I have, I've got a couple. I mean, I've talked to him quite a bit, at least said hello, kind of the surface level hello. Well, a couple of years ago at Cavs, was the first day of Cavs training camp a few years ago, and Woj was there. And all the other Cleveland media members were there. And the other Cleveland media members laughed because Woj said nothing to anyone, any of them. But he went out of his way to come over to me. And they always said that Woj was the sheriff in NBA media coverage, and I'm the new deputy. But he came over and talked to me, and we talked for, I don't know, probably half hour, 45 minutes. And I'm not kidding you. And this says so much about how hard he worked. He almost rarely looked up from his phone. Rarely looked up from his phone, almost never looked up from his phone. He was talking like this the entire time. I'm right here. He's doing this. Oh, yeah. And we're having a normal conversation, but he is constantly checking his texts. And this is his life. Now, he paid very well for this life, but that's your life. As an insider, the top insider in the game, Shams Charania began to give Woj a run for his money over the last 3 or 4 years. Before that, there was no other. When it came to NBA coverage, he dominated the landscape. I would still say he dominated. Shams just gave him a run for his money. And Shams, wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. Now, we know the story that Shams was Woj's protege, right? They worked together. Woj was working at Yahoo Sports, which I loved when he worked there because he called ESPN. He never would write ESPN. That's how much he despised ESPN, which is funny because Woj went to Bristol High School in Connecticut, and Bristol is where ESPN is located. But Adrian Wojnarowski refused to call ESPN in his columns. You know what he called him when he wrote for Yahoo Sports? Every time. A sports cable network. A sports cable network reported he would never call them ESPN. And sure enough, well, what's interesting is Jimmy Pitaro, who I'm sure you probably haven't heard of, was the boss at Yahoo Sports, was the editor at Yahoo Sports, the main guy, the chairman, I guess, when Woj was there. Well, Jimmy Pitaro went to ESPN. Now suddenly, Woj is a natural fit there. They have a great relationship. So we stopped calling them Sports Cable Network 7 years ago and made the move to ESPN, became their top insider. At that time, after Shams was still at Yahoo Sports, Woj wanted him to come with him to ESPN. And Shams said, no, I want to do my own thing. Then all of a sudden, boom, they're butting heads, they're competitors. I haven't asked either one of them about this, so I don't know. I believe it's true that there's friction between those two now, which is going to make this ESPN job very interesting. Right? Now, listen, for the past 24 hours, we have other stuff on the site, but I've posted a ton about Woj on our website because he's the news. He hates being the news. He has told me, I don't want to be the news. Too bad. You're too big of a name. You're the news. So, if I retired suddenly and put out a press release, maybe my mom would care. But with Woj, it's like the entire NBA community, not just the writers or the TV people or ESPN, but the players, the coaches, the GMs, the agents. All these people are like, what? So I think that the relationship between Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania may play a role. Shams Charania is 1A in terms of who ESPN should hire. That's the guy. He is the top NBA insider in the country now, and there's no other competition. Nobody even else comes close. To breaking news, there's no one else comes close. That's who ESPN theoretically will target. Shams's contract with The Athletic is up. He's going to be a media free agent. Now, keep in mind, NBC, Amazon are both going to be hiring a lot of NBA insiders because those two guys or those two outlets just got the NBA for the 25 season. I've heard Shams wants to write more. ESPN would afford him that opportunity. NBC Sports would afford him that opportunity. I don't believe Amazon has a sports website, so that's probably out. Unless he could do TV for Amazon and stay with The Athletic. He could re-up with The Athletic. So, if you're talking about free agency right now in the NBA, this is it. Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, NBA insider, leaving The Ringer. Hasn't set his next step. This is all within the last week and a half. Chris Haynes, my buddy Chris Haynes, who got his start writing for my website in 2008, he emailed me. Chris Haynes at TNT and Bleacher Report emailed me in 2008 and said, hey, would I be, could I write for your website? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't think I could pay you much. I could pay you a little something, but not much. And he said, that's okay. I just want to get my name out there. And I said, yeah, that's fine. 2008. And I said, yeah. And you know what else he said? He said, well, is it okay if I write for your website? I live in Fresno, California, and they don't have an NBA team. And I said, well, Chris, I launched this website. When I launched this website, I was living in Wheeling, West Virginia. So I think that's okay. And then thankfully, he went on to much bigger and better things. And Chris is a wonderful, wonderful guy. Former ESPN employee, he's leaving TNT Sports. So to me, Shams Charania, Chris Haynes. Now I'm talking about guys who are on the outside that aren't working at ESPN. Everything I'm hearing around here, I'm telling you what I know. People I talk to in the media, people in the industry, here's what I know. I've run into so many people who have their opinions. Like they'll come up to me and say, yeah, this person's getting a job. And I'm like, I can tell you I talk to enough people that person's not getting the job, but I keep my mouth shut because it's whatever. What good is, that's kind of condescending to tell people what I know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Shams Charania, Chris Haynes, Mark Stein, former ESPN employee who's now writing a Substack newsletter that's awesome called The Stein Line. Former ESPN employee, was let go when Woj came in 7 years ago, then went to the New York Times, and then left New York Times, started his own newsletter. He's got television experience. TV is a big part of this job. Woj, I love you. You were terrible on television. Shams Charania's good on TV. But, you know, look, not everybody's good on TV. It's just the way it is. So these guys have TV experience. Chris Haynes was sideline reporter for TNT. Shams does FanDuel TV, and he does a nice job. He's got a pretty good personality in terms of engaging with the audience. Mark Stein, obviously television experience with ESPN, longtime guy. I think that those, if you're talking about the top 3 insiders that don't currently work at ESPN, those are your names. I can tell you those are the names that ESPN is really looking at. Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports is leaving as well. He's their senior NBA reporter, does a good job. Like I said, Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, their NBA guy, leaving. So it's a major shakeup here. And it's going to be, I think we're going to play a little bit of a game of musical chairs here. But the focus is really on ESPN and who is going to replace Woj. Okay. I've heard names. Obviously, we all love Brian Windhorst. I love him. Talk to him all the time. Not all the time anymore, but have for years. I mean, we're both Akron guys. And Peninsula, in his case, Northampton for me. Peninsula, thankfully, still exists. Northampton only in our memories. But and Brian's dad, I believe, was the head of the Youth Baseball Association in Peninsula. His late father. But we've heard the name Brian Windhorst. Listen, I haven't asked Brian about this. What do I know from talking to Brian? And very little in terms of his job. What do I know about? I will say this. Brian's got it made right now. Right now. He's doing television. He's not staying up 24/7. He has at least one young child. This is not a job for somebody. I mean, why would you leave what you're doing right now with Brian, who's got, you know, I mean, he's got it good right now. If ESPN throws enough money at him and say, hey, you know, this is going to take over your life. This Woj job is going to take over your life. As opposed to what you're doing now, which is making really good money, still doing television, still being viewed as an NBA insider. I don't think I would be as stunned if Brian takes that job, Brian Windhorst takes that job, as I would be Woj leaving. That's not to say Brian's not qualified. He certainly is. That's the guy I would pick, frankly, because he's already at ESPN. And ESPN is thinking about hiring from within, but they've got to find somebody who wants the job. That's not going to be easy. Job pays what, $7 million a year? Okay, let's say it only pays $2 million a year. Only. I wouldn't do it. Sam, we're giving you $10 million a year. Can't pay me enough to give up my life. Can't do it. There's no way. Thankfully, we won't have to worry about that because they won't offer me the job. But, I mean, that's the reality of the situation. We're paying you anywhere from $3 to $10 million a year, depending on who you are, to give up your life. And you can't say, I'll do it for a year. Because the contract will stipulate, you do it for a year just for the money, you're going to pay us back. They own your soul, man. I don't want that job. I don't think Brian Windhorst wants that job. I'd be stunned if he took it. Dave McMenamin is a name to watch, in my opinion. Dark horse. Lakers writer. Covered the Cavs when LeBron was here. He does. The problem with Dave is he does such a good job of reporting that and writing on the Lakers and LeBron, and has such good relationships there. It'd be hard to pull him off that beat, but he would do an excellent job. I know Dave, talked to him. Great guy. Just got married. So I think somebody like that could be. And look, if you hire the right, listen, anybody who's hired from ESPN, if it were to be Windhorst, if it were to be Dave McMenamin, there's a few others in there that could get that job. You know, there's a few other NBA writers. I think that ESPN, anybody who works there now and covers the NBA is a candidate if they want it. I don't know if Brian Windhorst wants that job. I'm sorry to break it to you. I don't, look, again, you're giving up your life for $4 million a year. Some people will say yes, and I wouldn't blame them. You'd be in a good situation. Yes, I'll give you my life and go without sleep for the next 5 years for that money. Sure. But it's every day, all day. There's no time off. You're building relationships all day. You're doing favors for agents all day. And to me, I look at that job and I think, how much value is there in that? Right? That's a whole other topic. How much value is it to spend all of your time so you can tweet out something 5 minutes before the press release? People love it. Obviously, you get great money. But I look at it like, you know what happens on HoopsWire? If I tweet something out before the press release, I'm not helping HoopsWire. I'm helping Elon Musk. And before that, Jack Dorsey. It's not helping HoopsWire at all. It doesn't help HoopsWire until that story is on HoopsWire. All it does on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, all it does is help them. Drives them traffic. I still do it. We all fall victim to it, right? But I'm not making a single dime off Twitter. I don't get a dime. You're building your brand. Big deal. My buddy who runs a football website has basically he has no personal brand. His football website, NFL Trade Rumors, is the brand. He has no Twitter account. Larry Brown Sports. Ever heard of that blog? It's huge. I've talked to Larry Brown numerous times. Again, this is media guys' constant conversation. Larry Brown says we don't get flies off Twitter. But yet Larry has a full-time staff of 4. So my point is, what's the real value in that? And that's something ESPN is asking itself right now. I can tell you that. Do we replace Woj? Or do we just go with the flow and do it by committee? Saves $2, $3 to $10 million a year. Do it by committee. We don't have to beat the press release by 5-10 minutes. Because listen, let me give you an example. Today, Shams, and this isn't a criticism on their job, Schefter, Jeff Passan, who's a Cleveland guy, ESPN's MLB insider. It's not a criticism on them because they all work extremely hard and do great work. But my thought is there was a point, probably about 2015, 2016, where I thought, okay, number one, a lot of these guys are represented by the same agents who represent the players. As Brian Windhorst has said, we're never going to beat those guys because they have CAA. Woj was CAA, Creative Arts Agency, who represents all kinds of NBA players, is also Woj's agent. So who do you think CAA is going to give the breaking news to first? So about 2015, 2016, I realized, you know what, there's no value in me trying to beat these guys, even on Cavs news. That's a waste of time because I talk to the agents from CAA. Guess what? They're very nice. They're not going to tell me first who's signing with the Cavs. They've got their guy. They've got a client in Adrian Wojnarowski they're just going to give him the Cavs stuff first. And that's the way this works. That's kind of the secret sauce. And I think it's great. Again, for me, it's like, I'm never going to strive to be Woj or Shams. I don't know that I could get there anyway, but that's never been my goal. My goal is to build a website into a successful business. It's a totally different approach to the job. So, and I'll tell you this, if the Cavs I'll go back to Shams in a second. I know I'm getting off track. But if the Cavs were to, like when they signed Isaac Okoro, Woj, his last bomb was Isaac Okoro. I didn't even tweet it until about 2 hours later when I had it on the website. I was out at lunch or whatever when the news broke. It was a Saturday afternoon, I believe. And I was off doing something Saturday family-wise. And I saw the news and I thought, oh, that's great. Something for the website in a couple hours when I get home. And guess what? When I post that story, I got just as much traffic on it as I would have if I had posted it as soon as it happened. The website, it's not a breaking news thing. It's here's the news, here's our reaction to it. If you look at Pro Football Talk, which Mike Florio built from scratch, and he's been very helpful to me in my own website. He's not sitting there breaking news. Mike Florio has told me there is absolutely no value in your website in breaking news. None. Because you don't need people to go to Twitter or Facebook, as much as I love it, as much as I love 330 to go. And that's when I go to Facebook, is for 330 to go. Kid you not. First thing I do when I log into Facebook is check 330 to go. And hopefully don't see, the big block that says Sam Amico is no longer employed here. But so I go to 330 to go for Facebook, but it doesn't, my mom has said, hey, if I like your post on Facebook, does that bring you money? And I'm like, no, but keep liking it. But I'm just being honest. I don't get money unless you go to the website. Anyway, I'm trying not to make this about Sam Amico, which is hard, given that it's hosted by the dork, Sam Amico, of hoopswire.com. People have asked me last night, I play old man basketball three times a week. And the guys there were saying, would you want that job? Is that something and I'm like, guys, they wouldn't consider me. And if they did, I would politely decline, because I'm past that stage of life where I want to work 24/7. I'd rather work 4/4. Is that a possibility? So, I think with Shams, like today, he wrote about Joel Embiid signing a contract extension. 5 minutes later, the Sixers announced it. I don't even know if it was 5 minutes. We put it on the site an hour and a half after it happened. Joel Embiid with Sixers getting a contract extension. That would have been as profitable for me as posting it right away. Dropping everything and going and sitting at the laptop and posting it right away would bring me no more page views, ultimately money, than posting it an hour and a half later. So we always try to acknowledge everything that happens in the NBA, but we do it on our own schedule, right? Now, if there's big news, Donovan Mitchell extension, that is something I do drop it, but I don't tweet it out. I put it on the site and then I tweet out. I'll put 3 sentences on the site, tweet it out, and then go back in and fill out the story. But it always goes to the site. Everything is based on hoopswire.com, so that's kind of how it works for me. So I think the title of this show that I myself titled is Who's Replacing Woj? And I've said nothing about it, and we're 34 minutes in. So I'm going to wrap up. I think it's going to be Shams Charania. The only problem there is Woj is a senior, kind of acting as an advisor on this role and who should fill it. Will that work against Shams Charania? Because they've been at odds for so long, reportedly. I haven't asked either one. But everybody else in the industry says, yes, they've butted heads for 7 years. They've been competitors. There's a big friction and a divide between them. So will that eliminate Shams Charania? Chris Haynes. He has no beef with anybody. He just doesn't have a beef with anybody that I know of. Chris is a wonderful guy. Covered the Cavs for a year for Cleveland.com, playing dealer. If I had a rooting interest, it would be Chris. Now I don't know. He left ESPN, but so did Stephen A. Remember years ago, Stephen A. left ESPN and came back, then is bigger than ever. And Chris does a fantastic job, and he's someone near and dear to my heart. Poor guy. He and his wife, 4 daughters. I asked him. I saw him at a Cavs game. I'm like, "How's that going? 4 girls?" And he just shook his head, smiled, said, "I'm thankful to get to work." So, yeah, I think Shams is probably their top target. With Woj's blessing, that's the hire. That's the hire. Shams Charania will be your hire. That's going to be something to think about as we move forward. Who's going to be Shams' top competitor on the NBA insider market? I think it's Shams. I think we do have to consider Brian Windhorst in there, but I'd be stunned if he wants that job. I think Chris Haynes is a big target. I don't think that Mark Stein would go back, but I think he's a target. I think he's a guy who's definitely on their radar because he does such a great job. So those are my top 3. I'm going to go with Shams, Haynes, and Mark Stein in that order on who will replace Adrian Wojnarowski. Next week, Cavs coach Kenny Atkinson, Kobe Altman press conference on Friday. We're going to try to bring you the show, depending on their schedule, on the Cavs schedule. We're going to try and do the show from the practice facility here on 330 to go. Still got some things to work out in that area, but that's the goal. And then we got media day a week from Monday. I know the Guardians. I love it. And the Browns. I'm still up in the air on them. Aren't we all at all times? There's one thing we should be paid for, $3 to $10 million a year to be 24/7. It's worrying about the Browns. Start a whole industry on that. Brownsworry.com. I think we may be missing the boat. I'm going to talk to Steve, the producer, after the show, and maybe we'll start that website. For now, thanks so much for joining. Listen, I think it's a really exciting time for the Cavaliers. I know a lot of you guys don't think so because they didn't make any changes, but I'm excited to see and eager to see what's going to happen with Kenny Atkinson with this roster. I think it'll be cool to watch, and hopefully with good health with them. So, Cavs are coming up. We're going to have a ton on Adrian Wojnarowski and his potential replacements on hoopswire.com, and we'll have so much more here on HoopsWire Live on 330 to go, which I'm very thankful, always very thankful to be a part of, and glad that they have me. So until next time, happy trails, and we'll talk to you next week.